back in awe of our government. The food stamp program administered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture is proud to be distributing the greatest number of free meals and food stamps ever, 46 million people. Meanwhile, the National Park Service, administered by the U.S. Department of the Interior, asks us, please do not feed the animals. Their stated reason for the policy is because the animals will grow dependent on handouts and will not learn to take care of themselves. Thus ends today's lesson on irony. Two nuns were shopping at a convenience store. As they passed the beer cooler, one nun said to the other, wouldn't it be nice to have a nice cool beer or two on this warm summer evening? The second nun answered, indeed it would. Sister, but I would not feel comfortable buying beer since I am certain it would cause a scene at checkout. I can handle that with no problem, said the other sister. She picked up a six-pack and headed for the checkout. The cashier had a surprised look on his face when the two nuns presented a six-pack to purchase at checkout. We use beer for washing our hair, the nun said. Back at the convent, we call it Catholic shampoo. Without blinking an eye, the cashier reached under the counter, pulled out a package of pretzel sticks, and placed them in the bag with the beer. He then looked at the nun straight in the eye and smiled and said, the curlers are on the house. A Harley biker was riding by the zoo in Washington, D.C. when he sees a little girl leaning into the lion cage. Suddenly, the lion grabs the little girl by the collar and tries to pull her inside and slaughter her under the eyes of her screaming parents. The biker jumps off his Harley, runs to the cage, hits the lion square in the nose with a powerful punch. Whimpering from pain, the lion jumps back, letting go of the girl, and the biker brings her to her terrified parents who thank him endlessly. A reporter watched the whole event. The reporter, addressing the Harley rider, said, sir, that was the most gallant and brave thing I've ever seen in my whole life. The Harley rider replies, well, that's nothing. Really, the lion was behind bars. I just saw the little kid in danger and acted as I felt was right. The reporter says, I'll make sure this won't go unnoticed. I'm a Washington Post journalist, you know, and tomorrow's paper will have this story on the front page. So what do you do for a living, and what is your political affiliation? The biker replies, I'm a U.S. Marine, and I'm a Republican. The journalist leaves. The following morning, the biker buys a paper to see if it indeed brings the news of his actions and reads the front page. U.S. Marine assaults African immigrant and steals his lunch. And that sums up our media's approach to the news. A few Bible verses about money that I don't think we touched on earlier, and Patty made a list of all those Bible verses, so you can look them up. I'm going to read them somewhat quickly. There's a few more. It is God that gives you the ability to produce wealth. Amen. Deuteronomy 8:18 says, but thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power and great wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day. Another, don't be greedy for money and don't cheat and steal. 1 Peter 5:2, feed the flock, of course it's talking to bishops or pastors, feed the flock of God which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind. What's filthy lucre? It's taking money under false pretenses or getting some kind of dishonest gain. I think the biblical principle for making money is to save some over time and let it grow, and do not try to get rich, because in Proverbs 13:11, written by Solomon, pretty smart guy, wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished. But he that gathereth by labor shall increase, meaning that coming up over time. Save up for the future, Proverbs 30, verse 24 and 25. There be 4 things which are little upon the earth, but they are exceeding wise. The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. They work in the summer for their time later. I think God's principle is to store up for the future. Okay. So last time we started talking a little bit about investing. I want to continue that a little bit and share with you some of the things that I've learned, some of the things I've read, some of the things I've done. I'm now 65 years old. I never thought I'd get to be 65 years old, although I do plan to be 90-something. And I make my investments such that if I live to be 105, I'll have what I think is enough money to live to be 105. Now, whether I have enough money or not depends on how much, it depends on what have we been talking about? What do you have to control? Spending. So if I don't spend too much, I'm going to have enough. That's my plan. So saving for the future involves two things. One is taking some of your current income and putting it away, something in you that you're not going to even touch. And the other is investing in something that will make it grow over time. What are you going to do to make it grow? That's a difficult challenge. It really is. And especially for those of us who are every day is not spent time on studying and researching and what companies should we invest in or what markets should we do. So a lot of people trust brokers and trust investment advisors to do that for them. The trouble is there's many people out there that are looking to sell you something that you really shouldn't buy. They're fraudsters. They're out to take your money. And in fact, there's a lot of people out trying to sell you something. They don't even know that they're cheating you. They just know that they need a job, and here's an easy job. They're given a script, and they go out and try to push financial products on you, and you're going to end up not doing so well. Seriously, you won't do very well. So what are you going to invest in? I do believe that the United States capital markets is the best thing to invest in. That will be stocks and bonds. Me personally, I'm a risk taker by nature, so I invest almost totally in common stocks, something that is an ownership of other companies. In the United States, the stock market is regulated by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. The SEC is put together in the 1930s after the stock market crash in 1929. So what the SEC does is they do a lot of the regulating of companies so that what the things that they tell you are actually something that is supportable. One of my jobs was, as an accountant, was reading 10Ks and Forms S1s. How many people have read a 10K or a 10Q or an S1? Why would you? They're boring. But they do tell you a lot about a company. I've read hundreds, maybe a couple thousand of them, because that was my job and I got paid for it. So if you're not going to get paid for it, why would you do it? So investing in companies that have a good strategy, a good market, and a good plan, somewhat disclosed in those documents. But again, who's going to read all that stuff? So the idea is to invest in a lot of companies so you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket. And if you put all your eggs in one basket, now one company goes out of business for whatever reason. Maybe it's a good company with good people, but maybe they made buggy whips in the early 1900s, when buggy whips were all the thing because everybody had to have one. And then when cars come along, who needs a buggy whip anymore? Those companies went out of business. Why? Markets change. So to keep ahead of markets, you need to be invested in a lot of different companies. So for a long time, I was invested in mutual funds. Our firm had another division that was a bunch of investment advisors. And to encourage, so I don't understand what our firm was doing, so I could recommend our firm to our clients, I had them manage my pension funds. And as I watched over a year or two, I noticed what they were doing is pretty much investing in mutual funds, and they wanted to balance it out between fixed income or debt securities and more high-risky common stocks. I said, I don't want that debt stuff. I want this because I feel like I got a long time to work, and over the long term, common stocks are going to way outperform bond securities. As you get older, you're supposed to have more in bond securities and less in common stocks. I'm 65. I'm still here. That's my personal risk factor. Everybody's different. not trying to tell you should be this way or that way, one way or the other. But I would watch what they did, and there was no magic in what they did. They're going to invest in a few mutual funds, spread it around a little bit. And I said, I don't need your advice anymore. I stopped paying for them to advise me, and even though my firm wanted me to recommend to my clients, I couldn't do it because they weren't really, there's no magic in what they did. So be careful. I don't think there's anything fraudulent going on with our investment advisors. It's like, you don't know anything more than what I know, and I don't know much, really. So I just did my own mutual fund investments, pretty much had the funds did, and I kept the new money that I would put in each month, that's where it went, was to those mutual funds. Recently, though, I heard an interview with Jordan Belfort. Anybody know who Jordan Belfort is? Why would you? Everybody hear of the Wolf of Wall Street? That's Jordan Belfort. Jordan Belfort wrote a book, The Wolf of Investing. So Jordan Belfort was a very smart person, made oogles of lots of money, but he sort of misled people into his strategy was selling them on penny stocks, because on a penny stock the commission is this big. On high grade companies that are trading at a much higher price, not penny stocks. Penny stocks is any stock trading at under $5 a share. So they're highly risky. They're very cheap companies, but a lot of them go out of business. I've played with penny stocks. I've invested in some. My results aren't too good. But the broker's results for penny stocks, commissions are big, and for companies like IBM, Shell, large companies, Apple, those kinds of companies, commission's a lot smaller. Jordan goes, well, I'm not stupid. We're going to sell these penny stocks. And he got rich. And of course, his marketing tool was not the most honest, let's say. And because it was not the most honest, he went to jail for 2 years. Fully admits, I did wrong. I deserve to go to jail. I went to jail. Now he's out of jail, and he needs to make some money, so he does a lot of speeches, and he tells people what he learned about the markets, what they should do and what they shouldn't do. So he wrote this book, Wolf of Investing. And it's not a very complicated book. It's somewhat entertaining, but it's got a lot of foul language. I can't recommend you reading the book, but if you did read it, you'll learn a lot more about investing than I'm going to ever tell you. However, I will tell you then what the main point of his book is. And those are, commit to a monthly amount of investing and stick to it. Compound interest is an amazing thing. Anybody know what compound interest is? Compound interest is earning the interest on the interest you earned. So the more interest you earn, the more interest you earn on that interest. It's called compounding interest. And it's a miracle the way compound interest works. Another thing that's key is passive investing will always outperform active investing. What is passive investing? Passive investing is something like what I did was I put it in a mutual fund, didn't even look at it. So over time, companies are going to generally go like this. A wide diverse of companies, they're going to generally increase, right? So just put it away. Don't even think about it. Don't even look at it. This is for a long term. And I wouldn't. I was a passive investor. What is an active investor? I've heard of day traders, right? So an active investor is a day trader. Somebody's going to trade on stocks on a daily basis. They're going to actually probably read some investment reports, maybe read some 10Ks and read some 10Qs, try to get on initial public offering, IPOs. They'll buy stocks long and they'll buy stocks short. Buying a stock long is when you actually own the shares. Buying them short means I'm going to borrow somebody else's shares and I'm going to sell them. So you don't own the shares. I've sold them, but I have to return those shares to the person I borrowed them from. So if I think a stock is going to go down, I sell it short. I take today's price at a high price, sell it to somebody, but I have to buy it back. And then when the price goes down, I buy it back and give the shares away that I borrow. Make money. Selling short. Active traders sell short. They also deal in options to hedge their positions, those kinds of things. He says passive investing will always outperform active investing. One of the biggest reasons is the fees you got to pay for each trade. And the other one is, especially the U.S. capital markets, all information is known. every price of every stock is based on all available information. So unless you're going to trade on inside information, insider information is what people go to jail for, because you know something about a company that the whole market doesn't know. If you buy or sell stock because you knew something that somebody else didn't know or the whole market didn't know, that's insider trading. Ask Martha Stewart. You can do jail time for that. Unless you're a politician, you're okay. And they can, and I really hate that. But anyway. Mutual funds are a great way to invest in many companies, but the fees charged even in mutual funds are not cheap. Mutual funds fees are generally have an annual fee of 2% and a profit incentive to the investment advisor of 20% of the profits each year. An alternative is an index fund like the S&P 500 index fund. It has low fees, but it also has investments in a lot of different companies. The fees on some S&P 500 index funds are 0.04%. What that means in real terms is if you invest $10,000, the annual fee for the stock index fund is $4. The mutual fund is $200 plus 20% of all profits. And if there's losses, do they give any of that back? Oh, no way. So first let me talk about compound interest. So compound interest is like this. Let me give you an example. If you have a penny and double that penny every day for 30 days, how much will you have at the end of 30 days? Or how much would be there if you double it every day for 30 days? Anybody have a guess? Thousands? How many? Lots of thousands? 20,000. That's a good guess. So if I doubled a penny every day, what would it be? It'd be day 1 is a penny. Day 2 is 2 pennies. Day 3 is 4, 8, 16 after 5 days, right? Do you think he's close with 20,000? Higher or lower? Who says higher? Lower. Oh, no lowers. Oh, lower. Okay, good. Let me give you a couple of hints. In 10 days, it'll be $5.12. In 20 days, it'll be $5,242. In 25 days, it'll be $167,772. Any guess how much there'll be at the end of 30 days? Just 5 more days? $5,368,709.12 by doubling. That's compound interest. So on day 1, I had a penny. Day 2, I earned a 1 penny interest on that 1 penny. On day 3, I earned 2 pennies on the 2 pennies I had, 4 on the 4. That is compound interest. Compound interest works. Albert Einstein, you probably heard of him, referred to compound interest as the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands compound interest will forever earn it. He who doesn't understand it will forever pay it. Investing today for your future and putting a little bit away over time takes the advantage of compound interest and being able to accumulate money over that time from your savings. What is the S&P 500 index? The S&P 500 is the 500 most profitable companies in the United States. Who it is, I don't know, but there's a group of people who decide who is in the S&P 500. The S&P 500 was first come about, I think, in the 40s. I can't remember for sure. Maybe it was the early 50s. Anyway, so it benchmarks and tells you how the markets are doing by measuring these 500 companies. Well, as markets change, the 500 companies change. So back in the 40s, maybe let's go back to the 20s, there'd be some companies that were actually making buggy whips. In the 50s and 60s, there was a lot of manufacturing companies. The S&P 500 index today doesn't have very many manufacturing companies. It's got finance companies. It's got technology companies. It's got Apple. It's got Nvidia. It changes as the needs change to represent the markets. And how much of each company is in there depends on what these people think is the more representative of the U.S. markets. So you got smart people trying to figure out the 500 most profitable companies. And the fees on the S&P index fund is dirt cheap, $4 on 10,000 versus $200 on 10,000 plus a 20% bonus. On the S&P 500 index fund, there's no 20% bonus. I can't remember the guy's name. I should have written it down. Some guy who worked for Vanguard who developed the S&P 500 index fund, got it passed by the SEC as a cheap way to make investments. And what do you think the investment community thought of his wonderful idea? They hated it. They advertised like crazy how stupid this thing was. It took forever for that thing to catch on. But after a while, and today it's starting to catch on. Everybody who knows who Warren Buffett is? Warren Buffett is the Oracle of Omaha. He lives in Omaha, Nebraska. An oracle is somebody who is perceived to receive divine knowledge or divine intervention, right? He's the Oracle of Wall Street, Oracle of Omaha, because he's done very well with his investing, with his company, Berkshire Hathaway. He's known as a great sage, and every year he gives a progress report of his fund, Berkshire Hathaway. In 2006, Warren Buffett was very upset at the investing community, very upset that they took so much money away from real investors. You know how much the investment community makes a year? $140 billion every year. These are all your brokers, your advisors, your analysts, all those people. $140 billion. And Warren says, you know what? That's a lot of money that investors could be making. Where does the money come from? Me, if I make an investment and I pay a 4% fee plus 20%, plus I pay a brokerage commission when I buy it, when I buy a fund or buy a stock, $140 billion. Just think of the amount of money that industry takes out that could go to investors. So Warren Buffett put up a challenge. And his exact words were, I'm willing to bet anyone $500,000 that over 10 years an S&P index fund will outperform any hedge fund or collection of hedge funds that any of you can come up with. Any takers? For 16 months it was crickets, no takers. You know why? Because they're not stupid. They knew that Warren Buffett was right. You can't take $140 billion out of the system and have a good return to the investors, can you? After 16 months, though, somebody with an ego way bigger than mine, which is pretty doggone big, he says, I'll take your challenge. And he thought that, you know, I can beat Warren Buffett. He's bragging about it. He got quotes about, you know, he's going to take Warren Buffett down, show Warren Buffett, you know, who's really boss. And here's was a guy, his ego was so big, he really wasn't an investment advisor or a fund manager at all. So a fund manager is this person who manages a mutual fund and buys companies he thinks is going to do well, right? And make a return to investors, so he gets a 20% bonus. He's motivated to do well because he gets a 20% bonus or a share of a 20% bonus if the fund does well. So here's a guy who wasn't a fund manager himself. He thought he was really super smart. You know, when your ego gets too big, you really have a problem. I know. He's actually a fund manager that invests in other funds, called funds of funds. My firm audited hedge funds. We audited funds of funds and these funds too. So I know a little bit how they work. So if you take the principle that all knowledge is out there and you really can't pick any companies that somebody knows something about, because everybody knows everything about it, so the market is priced for each company where it should be. So what's going to make you any smarter than anybody else at picking its companies? What makes these investment advisors any smarter than anybody else either? There are a few that seem to have the golden touch. And those few, you and I can't invest in. They're there for really big money. If you got maybe 10, 20 million to invest, they want your attention. And you could get their attention. I don't have that much to invest, right? So I'm not going to get their attention. And the number of those people is probably less than 10 in the United States of America that are that smart. So if nobody's that smart, and a mutual fund's going to take, 2% plus 200 plus 20% of any profits, how are they going to win? This guy was a fund-of-fund manager. So he said, I'm not going to buy any companies. I'm going to buy in the funds that are going to do the best. I'm a fund-of-funds. Well, let's think about this a second. The funds that he's investing in take out 2% plus a 20% bonus. What does he do? As a fund manager of funds, he's going to take out another 2% plus a 20% bonus. So you're taking a hit by the same fees twice. If you invest in a fund of funds, you're paying double the fees. So the bet happened in 2008, January 1st, 2008. Anybody remember what happened in 2007, 2008, 2009? The housing bubble burst, sent the markets downward like crazy. What happened to the S&P index that year in 2008? It went down 38%. What happened to the active fund manager who was managing, he can hedge and anticipate, seeing those trends? His fund went down 24%. So he's ahead, or he's less behind. At the end of seven years, the S&P 500 index was so far ahead of the fund manager that he quit. He said, I quit. There's no way he can catch up. He's so far behind. Buffett said, no, we're going the full 10. At the end of 10 years, the index S&P 500 index fund was $840,000 ahead and made an $840,000 profit. The fund of fund manager made a profit too, $220,000. You can't beat passive investing. Will always beat active investing for two reasons. One, passive investing limits the amount of fees that you pay because you're not making transactions all the time. And passive investing or active investing, they don't know anything more than you and I know. You can throw darts at the stock market exchange and pick those stocks and do just as well as an active investor, unless you're some kind of guru or whatever, and there are a few, but we don't have access to those. So while I can't tell you what to invest in because I'm not an investment advisor, I can tell you the story that's true about what Warren Buffett said. He says, I'll put up the challenge, and he won the bet. So let me just tell you a few things about investing in something passive over time. So the S&P 500 index over its lifetime has had an annual return of 10.3%. One year in 2008, it went down 38%. There's other years where it goes up much more, so that averages out 10.3. Over the last 30 years, the S&P index has had a return of an annual compound return of 11.86%. That's hard to beat. That's really hard to beat. You're diversified in 500 of the most wealthiest, most profitable countries in the United States, and when one goes bad, what do? They kick them out, $4.99, they go get another one that's better, right? And you don't have to do a thing. Just write checks. Write checks and put it away. Let's say that you are 25 years old. And so for you youngsters out there, I want you to really pay attention. If you put away $200 a month, if you can find a way to put $200 a month from the time you're 25 to you're 65, 40 years, and invest it into a fund that would get a 10% return, not 11.86, not 10.3, just 10%. If you did that every month for 40 years, what would you have at the end of 40 years? $1,265,000. You could take out $10,500 per month for the rest of your life, even if you lived to be 200 years old, because you would never touch the principal. That's what compound interest does for you. Let's just say you're 25, you start putting away $200 a month, but you increase it as you make more as you get older. And for the first 10 years, you put in $200 a month. The second 10 years, you put in $500 a month. The third 10 years, $1,000, and the fourth 10 year, $2,000 a month. What would you have at the end of the 40 years? You would have spent a total of $444,000 you'd taken out of your pay for that 40 years, or an average of $925 a month, and you would have $2.5 million. You could take out, I wrote it down, $21,000 a month for the rest of your life, and if you live to be 105, like my plan is, you still have $2.5 million. So my point is, start early and put something away and don't touch it. Well, what if you're not early? What if you're 55? You got 10 more years to work. Now, you can work as long as you want, but just say you're going to retire at 65. What are you going to do? If you start even at 55 and put away some serious money, $2,000 a month for that 10 years, what would you have at the end of 10 years? You have $409,000. You could take out $10,500 a month. No, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. You could pay $3,500 a month for the rest of your life, even if you live to be 100 years old. So, start early is the best way to do it, but it's never too late. Still, you put money away, let it earn, you're going to have something for your future that you had never thought you'd need. All right, I better stop there. I'm going to talk about debt, credit cards, and tithing and income taxes, but I better save that for next time. Let's pray. Our Father, thank you, Lord, for today. Thank you, Father, for your principles in your word, that getting rich quick does not work, and that you do not honor that. That you do honor some hard work, labor, and putting stuff away for the future. Help us now to understand that. Help us with our own lives, our own financial situations that we're in. Help us to do right and live well. It's your name, pray, amen.